Welcome to a new video. Today's subject, epoxy versus polyurethane floors. This is a question I get a lot. What are the differences between epoxies and polyurethane floors? I mean, look at these two pictures here. One has been done with an epoxy floor, one has been done with a polyurethane floor. Do you know which is which? Someone who's experienced, if they go close up, they can probably tell the difference, but most of us cannot tell the difference. And more importantly, why do we select epoxy or why do we select polyurethane? This is the subject of today's presentation, so let's go straight and look at the main reasons why I would select one or the other. Now, very important point before we go on. In this video, I am talking about industrial floor coatings. There's many other applications like rooftops, sport surfaces, metal surfaces. We're not talking about these today. Today we are simply comparing industrial floor coatings, epoxy based and polyurethane based. We are going to look at the basic differences. Another important point, because some people need to remember that there's many different types of epoxy, many different types of polyurethane floors. Today we're looking at the basic differences to what we've seen in the industry over the past few years. So we are first going to look at the operational differences. These are differences that are based on how these two types of floors behave when the floor is in operation. So let me give you an example. Epoxy floors tend to be harder than polyurethane floors. They have a higher compressive strength and impact strength. So that's one of the reasons why we do prefer epoxies in heavy duty facilities. Here is an example of a warehouse where we have an epoxy floor. It was one of our own projects here completed. So just a few examples. Epoxies are preferred in warehouses. They are preferred in heavy industry, logistics centers, any facility with heavy forklift traffic. Epoxies are much better behaved than polyurethanes in this specific case. Now, another operational difference is, as we said, epoxies are harder. Polyurethane floors are actually softer and elastic. Now, this can be a good thing. One, because polyurethane floors are softer, they have a much better resistance to scratching because they kind of absorb the impact rather than just being forced on the surface. And because they are elastic, they can also work in low freezing temperatures. Here's an example of a polyurethane floor. We did this for a car park. We'll talk more about this car park later on, but polyurethane floors are preferred in car parks for several reasons. And let's just see now where you'd most likely see a polyurethane floor. You would see polyurethane floors in spaces with foot traffic because it's softer, more friendly towards pedestrians. You will see them a lot in multi-deck car parks. And why is this? Because the waterproofing layer is elastic. The PU layer is elastic, so it works better in a car park if you have many floors where you want to make sure that each floor also waterproofs from the floor beneath. That's why we would prefer polyurethane. And we also prefer polyurethane floors in freezing chambers because epoxy cannot withstand minus 30 degrees. Polyurethane can, so polyurethane is much more suitable for freezing chambers. Also, we tend to see polyurethane as a top coat, so we put the polyurethane as a thin top coat to prevent scratching. These are the operational differences. Now let's just go down the slide a bit. Another difference between polyurethane and epoxy floors is chemical resistance. Did you know that for certain types of industries we prefer polyurethanes? A great example is dairy production. Milk, yogurt, cheese production, these floors are exposed to lactic acids, and from chemical experiments we see that polyurethane floors are much more resistant to lactic acids than epoxies are. So for these types of floor, I would definitely recommend that you use polyurethanes. However, there are also other industries where epoxies are preferred. Another example is sulfuric acids. If you're working with battery production, for example, epoxies are much better. If you put a polyurethane floor with sulfuric acid, it will, let's just say, it won't look very good after a while. What we always recommend is check with the manufacturer of a product. If you have a strange chemical that your floor will be exposed to, always make sure that the type of floor you select is suitable. Very important to check for these check the chemical resistance characteristics. And let's go to the application differences. Here we talk about when you actually apply epoxy or you apply polyurethane, what are the differences? Is it exactly the same thing? Polyurethane floors are more sensitive to moisture. Have a look at this picture here. Look at these little bubbles. This is what happens. So just to summarize what I said, epoxy resins are also sensitive to moisture, but the damage done will be limited to maybe discoloration or blushing. Moving on to application differences, polyurethane floors actually do have a massive advantage over epoxy. And have a look at this little clock here. We can make polyurethane floors so we can extend or limit their pot life, their recoat time, as well as the total curing time. Polyurethane floors, you can apply a coating, in a few hours you can recoat it, and the next day you can tell the customer, here, go ahead, you can use it. This is not possible with an epoxy floor. Epoxy floors need 7 days to cure. So you'd have much more days required to complete a project than with polyurethane. And as I mentioned here, this flexibility means a contractor can complete a PU resin floor much quicker and turn it over to their customer in a short period of time. Epoxy floors will need 7 days. And I just want to go through a little example. This is car park. We actually completed this car park in 4 days, and the customer was able to use it. He gave us the car park on a Friday. As a final comment, I just want to say that polyurethanes are harder to work with. As I just showed, limited pot life means they also cure very quickly. So it's not as if you have half an hour, 40 minutes to apply a pack. Some polyurethanes may be curing in 15 or 20 minutes. So you need to be aware of that. Also, as we said, their humidity is an issue. You have to have very well-trained staff. Personally, I avoid supplying polyurethane resins to people that are not experienced.